Oh my gosh. Hi. All right. I just realized I need to plug this in. Boop. Okay. I don't know where this is going to go today. I'm realizing that, um, yeah, it's like a little spicy. I'm feeling a little spicy today. Let's see. We are talking about interruptions and stressors here in the Parinama method, page 227. We are talking about the interruptions and stressors for the sixth hub. And so I'm only planning on reading the introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about the choice of interruptions and stressors versus the use of the word trauma. So trauma is a noticeably absent word in this book for by and large, and it's by intention. And the thing is trauma because this is traumas and what traumas are. And so to me, the thing is like trauma is a word that it's kind of like the way I look at the term trauma is that it is not descriptive. It's a placeholder, and as a placeholder for a certain phenomenon, within it contains a connotations. Its initial introduction was for things like assault, um, like violent crimes. And so, so one of the things I think in the trauma, informed medical community they've grappled with is this sort of like capital T, lowercase t trauma. And I still felt like using trauma to describe these things would actually, for me, it did. So I applied this to the book. Was the idea was actually something that I would have, I'd see myself spending a lot of time trying to reconcile the notion of trauma in these formations in respect to trauma in this capital T form. So it would really block me from being able to consider these things as in the context of how we're looking at them in Parinama. And so it was honestly it was like one of those things, like um there's so much in this book that is there's an extraordinary amount of consideration that went into how it was organized, conceived, like constructed, and then the components of it. And I think that comes across for anyone who is reading it. It is, I think that, going back to, a lot of it's confronting in some ways for people that it is so nutrient dense. I remember one descriptor that a early reader, oh, is the microphone not working? Let me see. Okay, it's working. Had said, which they're like, actually, it kind of feels like taking one bite of a dessert that's going to take me an entire weekend to digest. So, considering that this is one aspect of that. And so let me talk a little bit about what I mean by interruptions and stressors. So interruption. Well, I'm going to start with stressor. So stress, as I sort of have like alluded to in previous readings, is stress makes easy things hard and hard things difficult. So we're speaking to what are factors that would stress the development of this component of our nervous system and the outlying like behaviors and aspects of our identity. What's going to like stress the development of that. And and one of the things about stressing the development of something is it actually retards the following, because it winds up the stress in it's making things, um, harder. It makes it creates a fixation on it in a sense where it absorbs a lot more energy, and we see this in, well, specifically using, like, the first and the second hub and, the early development. There's, there's a considerable amount of data that suggests that, when we're talking about first hub, that for children, infants, babies who are fixated on their survival, their physical survival, that those areas of their brain experience more development while the subsequent areas receive less, less energy, and in the sense of being shaped and grown, they're smaller. And so we're looking at this like as like the impact of putting stress on a component of our nervous system and understanding that that is going to actually create difficulty in it being able to like fully develop. Now, interruptions is kind of in that same like notion, which is like interrupting the, like, proliferating, expansive development of something into its sort of, like, natural, like, or its uninhabited inhibited form in a sense. And in a way, it's like, well, what could that ever be? So, and this is, and I think one of the implications I just made with that is that there's a version that things are supposed to be that they are not, which is not how, like, how I intend to position this. Because, I mean, the thing is the more and more that I get into the more I understand that like, that's just not the like, this idea that there's this sort of, like, perfect state of things, or there's, like, a healthy version of ourselves that exists, like the healed version. Um Like, that's a construct that is really problematic because it doesn't actually exist. So the more that we're creating notions of perfection and purity in the sense of it being achievable and sustainable, it's a state you pass through. And, if it is a state, yeah, it actually, yeah, I'd say it's a state you pass through. And so, like, the perfection, I would say the closest thing to perfection and the notion of purity is a state of complete acceptance of things as they are. So if the experiences you've had, we are just sort of released into sort of a joy and acceptance. And I think, if I hope you've experienced this where it's just a state of grace, where all of a sudden it's just like boop, and you just get a taste of it, a glimpse of it, and potentially continue to sustain it. That would be the closest thing to it. So the interruptions and stressors are are basically saying like what are the impacting factors for this particular hub. So now it's kind of like, well, why are we looking at this? And it's like we don't have to look at it, and we don't have to be doing any of this, um, unless we feel like we want more access to feeling more fully alive and more free, more liberated, and more unified with ourselves. Like, this isn't about any kind of notion of like kind of turning ourselves into like the optimized human, I mean, like, yeah. And I've mentioned this before, which is that if I hadn't known when I, in like, I used to really like pursue notions of like physical appearance, especially like in my yoga practice. There was always sort of you know, this like a real like kind of wanting for fit like things that had to do with things I could understand to want. And by sort of by extension, it was like, well, if I have these things, and this is the part that's kind of like next, like it, because where people are like, well, I want to be rich and I should be ashamed of wanting to be rich. It's like, no, 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 no. It gets a gong. That gets a gong. No, no, no. It's look at the next. It's like if like imagine yourself. There's like put yourself into the notion of what you think happens when you're rich. When you're beautiful, when you're loved by someone, you find the perfect partner, like wealth, career, fulfillment, and that it helps, like in that exploration. I was talking with someone, and they were telling me about like their thing about shopping, and they're like, God, and they've bigger, larger goals. So this person has larger goals about what they want to be doing with their money, but they're like, I just keep spending it. I just keep spending it. And that to me is like a glorious opportunity. Like I look at that and I'm like, oh my God, this is like fantastic. Because it's like so as being pretty anti-advice, my only prompt for them is like to so, and I didn't use I certainly didn't use like any polynomial language, but I was talking, like I said, just look at when you're buying the thing, how are you imagining it incorporated into your life, and put some more focus on what you're thinking happens in your life when you buy it. So the unconscious buying thing, it's like, a t-shirt. So it's like, are you seeing somebody like, it's like you're wearing the t-shirt and like it connects with somebody sees it and they go, oh my God, I love that too. And or you're recognized as being cool. Or are you buying a, serving platter for your house, or some decorations for your house because like the notion in it is that you will be surrounded by people appreciating your home and your home will be filled with love. Or so it's kind of like when when the spending, if it's like buying copious amounts of makeup, like where you have no chance of using it, will like absolutely expire, but it's like collecting things, especially like the idea of like, well, what am I imagining happens when I'm so attractive that's undeniable? And like, so in some cases like that, it's like, well, if I make the magnet strong enough, people will break through my walls, kind of stuff like that. Or, I have a lot of examples of this, but and but to the point, like to get back to the point, we're talking about interruptions and stressors. We're talking about just accessing more connection to the actual aliveness. And it is absolutely fine to want whatever it is that you want, as long, certainly as long as it isn't like, you know, this is certainly a gray area, but it's just like having some consciousness about like what we want and the impact it has on other people, not interfering with their integrity, authenticity, and their, destiny. Just like complicated. But with like not with socioeconomic matters. But yeah, that's a longer conversation. I'm very tempted to go and do it right now. I'm spicy. But in the interest of time, 15 minutes, I'm going to start reading and we will see what happens. Okay. All right. You ready? Do I look a little sweaty? I look a little tired. I'm surprised. I'm feeling, should I lighten up? No, that's not helping. How about this? Blue? Mm-mm. Maybe. Let's try this one. Oh, I think I just have to accept things as they are. That's how it's going today. Okay. We're doing this. We're doing it. Okay. So the primary interruptions and stressors in this hub involve the invalidation of intuition, ideas, and curiosity. Being told we ask too many questions or that what we see isn't real or correct, or having our ideas laughed off leads to an interruption in the development of this hub. In the following section on adaptations and holding patterns, I discuss how we adapt either by overinvesting in our imagination or by shutting it down. And if there feels like there is something missing here, because to me, I'm like becoming increasingly cognizant. In the seventh hub, we're going to get a bit deeper into like how this is about what we're seeing and perceiving. And in the seventh hub, we get a bit more into indoctrination. Um, so just wait for that. So you have that to look forward to if you stick around. What a selling point. Oh my gosh, you must be very intrepid. You must be very intrepid, I get the sense, if you've come along this far. Okay, again, throughout life, we build an inner library and we receive subconscious input through advertisements, pictures, and cultural standards. Cultural standards should be underlined and bolded and italicized and put in a font a couple sizes larger, but it's not. It's just right in there like any other word. For even the most well-adjusted kids, cultural stressors alone can cause interruptions when they try to figure out who they are in the larger world. With adaptations from the first four hubs relating to worthiness, self-doubt, powerlessness, emotional regulation, and physical trust and safety, body dysmorphia and impossible beauty and appearance standards get heightened as outcomes of the subconscious intake of cultural imagery. Hmm. How we feel about ourselves can contort what we see when we look in the mirror. Yeah, I mean, it's like everything. So the passage of time can allow a clearer retrospective view. When we look at pictures from our past, we can see our beauty and vulnerability, and perhaps the same distortion that hid the truth from view then may still be at work. And this may provide us the opportunity to question these distortions and reclaim ourselves. Yeah, you know what? I would say in this, so hmm, yeah, this notion, this like aspect of physical appearance is really powerful in the especially in the context of like cultural stressors and standards. Beauty for women gets conflated with worth, desirability, value, even like being worthy of being looked at. There's disgust, placed on women who are not conventionally attractive, who are overweight. That's socially sanctioned. Um, and and I think one of the like an important emphasis, and this is loaded, and I really understand this, is that it's about power, because the worthiness is not true. Like the inherent worth of your humanity. This extraordinary, like, yeah. It's about power in the societal construct that we live in. And that's a fact. It's a commodity. Is style an expression of beauty? That's its own thing. But the beauty itself that gets conflated with being worthy of, like, being cherished. I mean, it's pretty loaded, because when we go back to, like, what are the kind of 5 primary needs, how much, to feel safe and protected, to have to be delighted in, to have people, like, care about your advancement and your dreams and your growth, to be cherished. I mean, all of these things get connected to physical beauty for women specifically. But one thing I want to point to is it also happens for men too. Um, increasingly. And it's interesting, because it's almost like you could almost say it's like the hunger for like of like the marketing mechanism has like is like there's this TV show called Corporate, and there's an episode that, because they're this massive, mega global corporation. It's a comedy. It's really funny. And there's an episode where they're like, well, how do we like figure out, like how to, tap into another market? And they come up with male makeup, and it's like maybe 5-year-old TV show. We're getting kind of close there. And the thing that's interesting is that I will say, just in my own life, the amount of eating disordered eating with men is really on the increase, which is, like the form of like absolute like hyperfixation on macronutrients, and then trying to like cut and try like all this kind of stuff. Like it's like this is like nobody's getting left, because this is such a great mechanism for internal division, to internalize this sense of like of like a future state where you're lovable, a future state where you're deserving, a future state where you're attractive, a future state where you're worthy. And also that it's like your body as it is right now is like somehow betrayed you, and is like there's like an aspect of disgustingness that you're actively working to expel. And I would say that like one of the things I think, as far as like a word of encouragement on this, is that the division, the work that we do in mending these divisions makes this stuff like it very difficult for this stuff to, like, have, like, a strong traction. So when we're, chronically fearful, guilt, like, when we say, like, guilt-free food, it's like, "Fuck off." That's horrendous. It's, like, the most terrible thing ever. If you've said it, it's okay. I'm just saying generally. Shame, 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 like, that there's something, that you have to cover up. If somebody knew what I actually am, that if people knew, so it's like, well, at least if I'm, gild the, lily, so to speak, that kind of thing. But most importantly, in the, the fourth hub measure of the relationship we have with ourselves, that we're not finding love, this kind of like transformative love is only attainable outside of ourselves, that this love, this depth of love is actually achievable internally, and that internal fortitude, that the strength of that actually is something that creates a deeper connection with others. And also, with others, certainly it creates a naturally occurring crucible of transformation. But, as far as ultimately, like when we're looking at these matters about worth as it relates to appearance, that the internal early hub stuff like kind of crowds out a lot of the opportunity for this stuff to be as loaded, to be like induce as much panic as shame, like these feelings that arise with this that are like, oh my God. Um, so let's keep reading. Okay, so how we were taught to view differences in other people and ourselves has profound and long lasting effects on our relationship with our bodies. If we were singled out for our unique appearance when we were little, the effect can last a lifetime unless we explore and untangle the snarled psychological damage caused by ignorance and cruelty from others. Yeah, I mean, the fact is, it's just not true. This is so I guess that's probably an important thing, is like the belief about anything about you that is like, this is actually ugly or this is gross or, it's like, it's just not true. Like the other day I was in Sephora and I looked up and I had these like two like really long whiskers growing out of my chin. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you could be like, do a little stronger, but it's just, it's like, oof, there's just there, I mean, like, did I try to like pull them out with every fiber of my being? Sure. But like the thing is with it is that it's like it's just not true. It's just not true. I don't know how else to say it. Anything that you think about yourself, any kind of talk where you're like, "Oh my this and that," it's like I think about like a good example is like my cat. Like my cat, there's just like nothing about him that I don't think is amazing. It's like maybe you have a pet or someone you love or your partner or something where you can just like there's just idiosyncrasies you look at and you're just like it's evidence of their existence, their humanity, their like unique charm, like the thing that makes them what they are, or that's funny. It's not like, I mean, if and just even seeing it lovingly, if it's like just there's and that's true. Like that your beauty is actually kind of like a emanating aspect of just your existence. like the brightness, the brightness in you. And and understanding that the beauty in this context is what gets taken away when like when we like put a motor on the kite or something, when we're kind of like, let's make this work. It's like it, working in situations that absolutely like decimate our sense of self, being in relationships with people that decimate our sense of self, that are just out of integrity, that force us to contort in ways that are just absolutely excruciating and unsustainable. I mean, one of the things about any relationship is that it's going to involve some need to shift ourselves to accommodate. That this is a fact. But when we're having to accommodate to a level where we have distorted ourselves in a way that we absolutely can't sustain, I think this sustainability is probably a good measure of that. But I don't know. You tell me. So our lizard brainstem has us fearing the unfamiliar. Oh yeah, because that's like about differences, how we're taught about differences. Let's see if the book is here. Oh yeah, this book's great. I'm gonna pull this forward as a recommendation. Hang tight. Okay. Our lizard brainstem has us fearing the unfamiliar, yet our higher consciousness sees variability and difference as interesting, unique, and a vital contribution to the world. So once again, I mean, this is one of the places where it's like these different subsections of our brain. The one that keeps us safe seeks safety, and the one that seeks our transcendence seeks novelty. Can watch them battle it out if you sit back and enjoy the show. So, okay, it's a common misconception that we need to understand the differences in other people to accept them and embrace our shared humanity. I'm going to read that again for the people in the back. It's a common misconception that we need to understand the differences in other people to accept them and embrace our shared humanity. So this is okay. I'm going to keep reading and then I'm going to talk about it. In the Body is Not an Apology, but author and activist Sonia Renee Taylor outlines 3 steps to radical self-love. Okay, I'm going to put a pin in that because I'm going back to this. This is a very, very important single sentence that this is one of those things where I think where I'm like, this is so major, and I'm like, I could see how you could just kind of like surf right over it. So it's a common misconception that we need to understand the differences in other people to accept them and embrace our shared humanity. So and this is certainly like a ruling class kind of thing, is like you need to make sense of yourself in context to me for me to accept it. So a very commonplace example of this is men that are like, well, now I have daughters, so I care about women now, right? Or that's, even like gay marriage, being like, well, they just want the same things I do. They want like that whole thing of like that validating it. Oh, they want the same things I do. It's like, what, like these stuff, like even the things about lifestyle, where it's like having to find, it's like the heroic work is having to find, being able to find the thing that makes it similar to the things that you want. Like, what if there's nothing similar? It's like, what if there's nothing similar? I mean, there is, but look, the fact that like being in the position that it's like this must make sense for me in order for me to accept it. Like I'm in the position where this needs to actually like fit into my worldview and fit into my understanding of how things operate for it to be an acceptable way for another human to live their life. Mm, very, very common issue, which is like, especially with, I see this, like I was working in a company that was doing, this like diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff. And it was like about education. And it was like, I don't know, my whole thing was like, God, this just keeps putting the onus on people being like, I need you to understand my humanity, where it's like, how about we just understand humanity? Cut cut the shit, and then just be like kind of delight in the being sort of exposed to new ideas and different ways to be. But the idea that it's kind of like people are on trial to present themselves as not being, antisocial lunatics that want to come and, eat your face or whatever. Like that whole notion that's like, it's a point of proof. It's like, well, if we do a presentation and show you that we're just like you, then, and you're not, like, that's the whole issue, is that it's like you're just gonna keep coming up against the fact that it's like, yes, there is difference. And it's like, so it's kind of like, well, the things that are similar to me are the things that make this feel like something I can accept. Things that are different make it the thing that I'm willing to make concessions on. I mean, like, just every single iteration of looking at this, you find problems. Like every single issue, every iteration is like, well, that's problematic. There's just, so here we go. Let's read it. So recommend this book. Don't sleep on it. It's interesting. This is like the new version of it. The body is not an apology. Nobody should be surprised it's a Black woman. Good Lord. Black femme woman. Yeah, it's extraordinary. And look, it's not that thick. Read it. Do it. Okay. In the Body is Not an Apology. Put this up for will we read her words. Author and activist Sonia Renee Taylor outlines the 3 steps to radical self-love. The first is to make peace with not always understanding other people. The first is to make peace with not always understanding other people. The second is to make peace with difference. The second is to make peace with difference. And the third is to make peace with your body. So first is to make peace with not always understanding other people. The second is to make peace with differences. And the third is to make peace with your body. This should be like necessary reading for this hub. And it's in its audiobook form. It's audiobook form. What I would recommend, if possible, is that you get the book and audiobook, because you'll very likely want to be able to like look at it. But audiobook does the job if you want. It's a good place to start. Okay, where are we going here? Okay. Judgment and shaming aren't about what we objectively see, they're subjective. And the reasons we judge and shame are related to early interruptions. The restorative process involves lifting any illusion that there can be anything objectively wrong with the body. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. The restorative process involves lifting any illusion that there can be anything objectively wrong with the body. There's nothing wrong with you. If this is something that resonates, get in here. Yeah. And yeah, I think one of the things is there's kind of was this like thing. It's like, you're beautiful no matter what. And it's like, that's kind of shit too, is a little much. Like, it's like it's almost like the notion that it's like if we just expand the notion of beauty to include absolutely everything, that would somehow save us from the reconciliation that's necessary. Or just sort of like, what is it? Like, gaslight people into it. It's like, there's nothing wrong with you, and, like, what your beauty ultimately is it's an emanating aspect of your aliveness. It is absolutely not characteristics. I mean, it's not absolutely not. It's like that's like an inclusion of it rather. Yeah. Yeah, it's part of it, but it's just not, I mean, it's not the main stage. I don't know, maybe I'm not explaining it that well. I think maybe I've gone on too long this time. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap it up and just say thank you for coming along for the ride, Mira. Your comments give me life. I swear it is literally like waking up to, I don't know. I didn't wake up to Christmas Day, so but like the analogy, like waking up and it's like a magical thing. Um, yeah, it's really wonderful. I really appreciate it. Any comments I will answer and respond to. Any liking the video, just it encourages me. I love it. It feels nice to see. And just watching it, I'm so grateful um, that this is something that a process and that you're, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just grateful for your presence in this. It's important. It's important for this singular reason of what's possible in terms of the felt sense of being alive as being truly extraordinary. So I'm just sending you so much love and appreciation. And please argue with me. I'm waiting for somebody to fight with me. Oh, God. That's a long story. All right. Wait, that gets a gong. Gotta be careful what you wish for, I guess, right? Plenty of people want to fight with me on this if they knew about it. Okay, I'll talk to you next time. And again, I love you. Bye.